Commander Rex Murphy stared at the massive alien warship through his bridge's view screen and immediately regretted every life choice that had led him to this moment. The ship looked like someone had crossed a medieval cathedral with a very angry porcupine, and Rex was pretty sure that wasn't a good sign for diplomatic relations. "So," he said to his communications officer, "remind me again why I volunteered for first contact duty?" "You said, and I quote, 'How hard can it be to shake hands with some aliens, sir?'" "Right. Note to self, stop being an optimist." Rex straightened his uniform and activated the comm channel. "This is Commander Rex Murphy of the Terran Diplomatic Corps. We come in peace, we bring snacks, and we're really hoping you don't immediately try to vaporize us." The reply came in a voice that sounded like gravel being fed through a meat grinder. "I am Captain Vex Thornscale of the Saurian Confederation Warfleet. You will surrender your vessel immediately, soft flesh, or face the wrath of true apex predators." Rex blinked. "Okay, well, that escalated quickly. Listen, Captain Thornscale, I appreciate the whole intimidating predator thing you've got going on, but we're actually here for diplomacy. You know, talking instead of shooting. It's this crazy new concept we've been experimenting with." "Diplomacy is for prey species," Vex snarled. "Your kind appears weak and pathetic. You have no claws, no fangs, no natural armor. How did such feeble creatures even achieve spaceflight without being devoured?" "Oh, I don't know," Rex said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Maybe by using our brains instead of compensating for something with really big teeth? Just a thought." On the alien ship's bridge, Captain Vex Thornscale was having his own moment of confusion. The human's vessel was small, seemingly unarmed, and crewed by creatures that looked like they'd lose a fight with a particularly aggressive houseplant. Yet something about this Rex Murphy's tone suggested he wasn't nearly as concerned as he should be about facing a fleet of apex predators. "You mock me, soft flesh?" Vex's scales rippled with indignation. "I have conquered 17 star systems. I have never met a species that did not flee in terror at the sight of Saurian might." "Well, congratulations on being the galaxy's most successful bully," Rex replied. "I'm sure your mother is very proud. Now, about that diplomacy thing." "My clutch mother was indeed proud," Vex interrupted, missing the sarcasm entirely. "She taught me that only the strong survive and the weak exist only to be dominated." Rex rubbed his temples. This was going to be a long day. "Look, Captain Angry Lizard. I am not a lizard, I am a proud Saurian warrior." "Right, sorry. Captain Angry Dinosaur with daddy issues. Here's the thing. Humans didn't claw our way to the top of the food chain by being the biggest or the strongest. We did it by being smart, adaptable, and really, really good at holding grudges. So, maybe, just maybe, we could skip the whole who's the apex predator measuring contest and try talking like civilized beings." Vex's confusion deepened. In his experience, prey species either submitted immediately or died trying to fight. This human was doing neither, and it was unsettling. "You claim to be apex predators? You with your soft skin and tiny teeth?" "Buddy, we turned wolves into purse dogs and made plants grow where we wanted them to grow. We've never met a problem we couldn't solve with enough stubbornness and creative application of explosives. Trust me, you don't want to find out what happens when humans get creative." The standoff might have continued indefinitely, with both species convinced they were obviously the superior predators, but the universe had other plans. A priority distress signal suddenly crackled through both ships' communication systems, cutting through their mutual posturing like a knife through diplomatic protocol. "Mayday, Mayday, this is Research Station Kepler-7. We are under attack by unknown hostiles. They've taken the facility. The younglings are trapped. Anyone receiving this, please?" The signal cut to static. Rex and Vex stared at their respective screens, the weight of the situation suddenly making their territorial disputes seem petty. Children were in danger, and despite their fundamental disagreement about who would win in a fight, both species had very strong opinions about protecting the young. "Wells," Rex said finally, "I guess we're about to find out which one of us is the real apex predator after all." Both fleets converged on Research Station Kepler-7 with all the coordination of two drunk drivers trying to parallel park. Rex's diplomatic vessel followed Vex's dreadnought through hyperspace, each captain secretly hoping the other would get there first and do all the dangerous work. "Scanning the station now," Rex's sensor officer reported. Well, sir, it's not good." The research station hung in space like a broken toy, its lights flickering erratically. Massive tears in the hull suggested whatever had attacked it wasn't interested in subtle warfare. But the really unsettling part was what the sensors weren't detecting. No bodies, Rex muttered, studying the readings. Structural damage, signs of a fight, but no casualties. What kind of attack leaves no bodies? Vex's voice crackled over the comm. Perhaps your sensors are malfunctioning, soft flesh. Saurian technology detects the same anomaly. No corpses, no signs of conventional weapons. This is unusual. Great. So we're dealing with space ghosts. That's not ominous at all. As they approached the station, Rex's communications officer suddenly perked up. Sir, I'm picking up faint life signs, multiple species, but they're all registering as small, very small. Define small. Juvenile small, sir. I think they're kids. Rex felt his stomach drop. Patch me through to Thornscale. Hey, Captain Scales for Brains, are you seeing this? I see it, Vex replied grimly. The attackers took the adults and left the younglings. This is not the behavior of honorable warriors. Yeah, well, most kidnappers aren't really concerned with honor. Any idea what we're dealing with here? Before Vex could respond, the station's emergency broadcast suddenly activated. A holographic image flickered to life, showing a terrified researcher of some bat-like species Rex had never seen before. If anyone receives this, stay away from Kepler 7. They came from the dark spaces between stars. They call themselves shadow devourers. They feed on terror, especially the terror of the young. They take the adults to use as bait, but they always leave the children behind to ripen in fear. The hologram glitched. They're drawn to displays of dominance and aggression. The more predatory a species acts, the more they want to... Static swallowed the message. Rex and Vex stared at their screens in silence for a long moment. Shadow devourers, Vex finally said. I have heard whispers of such creatures in the old war songs. Ancient enemies that feast on fear itself. Well, that's just fantastic, Rex said. So we're dealing with literal nightmare fuel that specifically targets anyone acting like a big scary predator. And here I thought this day couldn't get any worse. You suggest we abandon the younglings. What? No, of course not. I'm just saying maybe our whole who's the bigger badass contest isn't going to help here. Rex pulled up the station schematics. Looks like the kids are holed up in the emergency shelters on Deck 7. Multiple species by the looks of it. This was some kind of intergalactic daycare research thing. What? The military were studying child development across different species. Great. So we're not just rescuing random kids, we're rescuing a bunch of scared alien babies who probably don't even speak the same languages. Vex's tactical display showed his fleet taking defensive positions around the station. My warriors are ready to storm the facility and eliminate any threats. Hold up there, Rambo. Did you miss the part about these things being attracted to aggressive predator behavior? Maybe charging in with guns blazing isn't the best strategy here. Then what do you suggest, Softflesh? That we simply ask these shadow devourers politely to leave? Rex studied the readings, his mind racing. The life signs were clustered in the emergency shelters, but they were fluctuating wildly, the universal sign of extreme stress in most species. Meanwhile, his sensors were picking up strange energy patterns moving through the station's corridors like smoke. I suggest we go in quiet and focus on getting the kids out safely. Whatever these shadow devourers are, they've apparently been feeding off the terror of a bunch of alien children for who knows how long. Our job isn't to win a war, it's to run a rescue operation. Rescue operations are for prey species, Vex said automatically, then caught himself. Although, protecting the young is the duty of all apex predators. See, we're making progress already. You bring the muscle, I'll bring the... What do humans bring to this kind of situation? Rex looked at his small crew, a medical officer who looked like she belonged in a children's hospital rather than a combat zone, an engineer who solved problems with duct tape and optimism, and a communications specialist whose idea of conflict resolution was offering everyone cookies. Actually, Rex said slowly, I think I know exactly what humans bring to this party. And these shadow devourers are about to learn why you should never mess with someone else's kids when humans are around. Vex wasn't sure what to make of the human's sudden confidence, but something in Rex's voice suggested this wasn't going to be a conventional rescue operation. 20 minutes later, Rex was beginning to question every decision that had led him to volunteer for diplomatic duty. He stood in the station's emergency shelter, surrounded by 24 alien children of various species, all of whom were either crying, hiding, or, in one memorable case, trying to bite his ankle. Okay, everyone, let's just calm down, Rex said, crouching down to child height, and immediately regretting it when something that looked like a fuzzy purple starfish launched itself at his face. I know this is scary, but we're here to help. Behind him, Lieutenant Pip Chen, his enthusiastic medical officer who had somehow talked her way into the rescue mission, was attempting to distribute snacks to a group of what appeared to be baby centipedes with butterfly wings. "Commander, I think this one's having an allergic reaction to our emergency rations. Or maybe it just doesn't like peanut butter," Rex suggested, gently removing the starfish creature from his hair. "Not everyone appreciates our sophisticated Earth cuisine." The shelter's doors hissed open, and Captain Vex Thornscale entered, followed by his second-in-command, Sub-Commander Grak Ironhide. The effect on the children was immediate and unfortunate. Every single alien child immediately began screaming. "Well," Rex said over the din, "that went about as well as expected." Vex stood frozen in the doorway, his impressive 7-foot frame suddenly seeming less intimidating and more like a very confused dinosaur at a daycare center. "Why are they making that noise?" "Because you look like every monster from every bedtime story ever told," Rex explained. "Grak, maybe try smiling." Grak attempted a smile, revealing several rows of razor-sharp teeth. The screaming intensified. "Not helping, buddy. Not helping at all." Sub-Commander Grak, who despite his fearsome appearance was actually the fleet's chief logistics officer and secret softy, looked genuinely distressed. "I do not understand. Young Saurians find my presence comforting." "Yeah, well, young Saurians probably don't have afraid of large scaly predators hardwired into their DNA," Rex said. He turned to address the children, switching between the 3 galactic trade languages he knew. "Hey kids, these are the good guys. They're scary-looking good guys, but still good guys." One of the butterfly centipedes, apparently the brave one of the group, chittered something that Rex's universal translator rendered as, "The tall soft one smells like safety pack leader, the scale ones smell like Deathbringer hunters." "Great," Rex muttered. "I smell like a safety blanket, and you guys smell like the boogeyman." Rex's pride was taking a serious beating. "This is ridiculous. I am a protector of younglings. In Saurian culture, the strongest warriors are always the most trusted with the care of children." "Different cultures, different rules," Rex said, then had an idea. "Pip, break out the emergency comfort supplies." "Sir, we don't have emergency comfort supplies." "We do now. Grab anything soft, warm, or food from our supplies. Grak, I need you and your captain to sit down." "Si? Sis." "On the floor. Make yourselves smaller, less threatening." Vex bristled. "Warriors do not make themselves smaller. Warriors also don't let children suffer because they're too proud to adjust their tactics," Rex shot back. "You want to protect these kids? Then protect them in a way that actually works." Reluctantly, both Saurians lowered themselves to the floor. The screaming diminished slightly, though the children still kept their distance. Rex, meanwhile, had discovered he had an unexpected talent. The purple starfish creature had somehow ended up cradled in his arms and was making what sounded like contented purring noises. 2 of the butterfly centipedes had cautiously approached and were investigating his uniform with obvious curiosity. "Ha," Pip observed. "Commander, I think you've got a gift." "A gift for what?" "Interspecies childcare." Rex looked down at the growing collection of alien children gravitating toward him. A small, blue, seal-like creature had wadded over and was now using his leg as a pillow. "This is not what I signed up for when I joined the diplomatic corps." "But you're good at it," Grak observed, his voice softer than Rex had ever heard it. "They trust you instinctively." "Yeah, well, humans have had a lot of practice taking care of things smaller and more vulnerable than we are," Rex said, then paused as he realized what he'd just admitted. "I mean, that came out wrong." "Did it?" Vex asked thoughtfully. He was watching the way the children moved around Rex, not with the desperate submission of prey seeking protection from a predator, but with the comfortable confidence of youngsters who'd found a reliable caretaker. Pip had successfully distributed snacks that were apparently acceptable to alien palates, and the shelter was beginning to calm down. The children were still wary of the Saurians, but they'd stopped screaming and started watching with obvious curiosity. "The small blue one is injured," Greg observed, his predator eyesight picking up what Rex's human vision had missed. "Claw marks on its back appendage." Rex gently examined the seal creature, who submitted to the inspection with complete trust. "Looks like it was grabbed by something with very sharp claws. Recent, too." "Shadow devourers," Vex growled. "They marked it to track the fear response." "Well, that's disturbing," Rex said. "Pip, can you do something about these injuries?" As his medical officer got to work, Rex found himself in the surreal position of essentially running an intergalactic daycare center while 2 apex predators provided backup security. The absurdity of the situation wasn't lost on him. "You know," he said to Vex, "when I woke up this morning, Babysitting a bunch of alien kids with a couple of warrior dinosaurs was not on my to-do list. Nor mine, Vex replied. Yet here we are. Here we are, Rex agreed. And honestly, I think we're better at this than either of us expected. The relative peace was interrupted by Pip's scanner suddenly beeping urgently. Commander, I'm picking up those strange energy signatures again. Multiple contacts, closing fast. Rex felt every protective instinct he never knew he had suddenly kick into high gear. The children sensed the change in his demeanor immediately, clustering closer to him. How fast? He asked. They'll be here in minutes. Rex looked at the 24 alien children who were now depending on him, then at the 2 Saurian warriors who'd gone from enemies to reluctant allies to something like partners. Right, he said grimly. Looks like playtime's over. The lights went out. Not just dimmed, not just flickered, they died completely, plunging the emergency shelter into absolute darkness. In the silence that followed, Rex could hear 24 alien children holding their breath in perfect, terrified synchronization. Then the screaming started. But it wasn't coming from the children. It was coming from everywhere else. Emergency lighting, now, Rex barked, and Pip's handheld illuminators blazed to life, revealing something that made Rex's blood freeze. The children weren't just scared. They were paralyzed with a terror so pure it was almost tangible. And in that terror, Rex could see something moving, in the shadows, at the edges of their light. The shadow devourers had arrived, and they were nothing like he'd expected. They weren't solid creatures at all. They were writhing masses of living darkness that seemed to absorb light, sound, and hope with equal enthusiasm. Worse, they moved like smoke, pouring through ventilation grates and under doors, flowing around obstacles with the patient inevitability of rising water. Defensive positions! Vex roared, his warrior instincts kicking in. He raised his plasma rifle, and the shadow things reacted immediately, growing larger, darker, more substantial. They feed on aggression, Rex shouted. Put the weapon down. I will not cower while younglings are threatened. You're making it worse. But Vex was already firing, his plasma bursts lighting up the shelter like deadly fireworks. Each shot seemed to energize the shadow devourers rather than harm them. They swirled around the energy blasts, drinking them in, growing more solid and more terrifying with each passing second. The children's terror spiked, and Rex watched in horror as the creatures began to take more definite shapes, twisted amalgamations of every predator instinct that had ever haunted a young mind, claws like broken glass, teeth like shattered mirrors, eyes like dying stars. Vex, stop shooting. Never. A Saurian warrior does not retreat. Grok had joined the firefight, his heavy weapons painting the walls with destructive light that only seemed to feed the creatures. The shadow devourers were growing stronger, more numerous, more real, with every aggressive action. And then Rex noticed something that made his heart skip a beat. The children weren't just terrified of the monsters. They were starting to be afraid of the Saurians too. The warriors' roars, their weapons, their very presence, was making everything worse. New plan, Rex shouted over the chaos. Everyone stop fighting and listen to me. This is not the time for diplomacy, Vex snarled, reloading his weapon. This is exactly the time for not being idiots, Rex shot back. He was still holding the purple starfish creature, who had wrapped itself around his arm like a terrified fur stole. The other children were pressed against him, and despite the absolute nightmare surrounding them, they weren't running from him. They trusted him. Rex made a decision that would have gotten him court-martialed if anyone back on Earth found out about it. He stepped directly between the Saurian warriors and the shadow devourers, using his own body as a shield for the children. But if you want them, he said quietly, you go through me. The effect was immediate. The shadow devourers paused in their advance, confused. This wasn't predator behavior. This wasn't the aggression they fed on. This was something else entirely. Rex felt the children's grip on his uniform tighten, and he realized something profound. He wasn't trying to dominate the threat, or overpower it, or intimidate it into submission. He was simply refusing to let it pass. Not through violence, not through strength, but through sheer, stubborn, human determination. Pip, he said calmly, start evacuation procedures. Get these kids to the shuttle bays. Sir, we can't just... We're not abandoning anyone. We're being smart about this. Rex looked over his shoulder at the Saurians. Vex, Grak, I need you to stop thinking like predators for about 5 minutes and start thinking like protectors. There is no difference, Vex protested. There's a huge difference. Predators hunt. Protectors guard, predators attack, protectors defend, predators dominate, protectors serve. Rex was backing slowly toward the exit, keeping himself between the children and the creatures. These things eat fear and aggression, so stop giving them what they want. The shadow devourers were following, but slowly, seemingly confused by Rex's behavior. He wasn't running in terror, but he wasn't standing and fighting either. He was doing something they didn't understand. He was tactical, retreating while providing cover. "This is madness," Vex muttered, but Rex noticed he'd lowered his weapon. "This is adaptation," Rex corrected. "Humans didn't survive by being the strongest, or the fastest, or the scariest. We survived by being willing to change our approach when the old approach wasn't working." They reached the corridor, and Rex's plan started to become clear. Instead of fighting room to room, they were going to move the children systematically toward the shuttle bays, with the humans providing comfort and direction, while the Saurians provided mobile defense without the aggressive posturing. "Form up behind us," Rex instructed. "No roaring, no weapon charging, no displays of dominance. You're not conquering heroes right now. You're security escorts." Grok looked physically pained by this instruction. "But we are warriors." "You're whatever these children need you to be," Rex said firmly. "And right now, they need you to be quiet, calm, and following my lead." The evacuation began, and it was unlike any military operation any of them had ever participated in. Rex moved through the corridors like he was leading a field trip rather than a retreat, talking softly to the children, keeping them calm, making sure no one was left behind. The Saurians flanked them, their weapons ready but not actively threatening, their posture protective rather than aggressive. And it worked. The shadow devourers followed, but they seemed confused, weakened. Without the feast of terror and aggression they expected, they were losing cohesion, becoming less substantial. "They're fading," Pip observed, checking her scanner readings. "Good," Rex said. "Keep it up. We're almost to the shuttle bay." But the creatures had one more surprise waiting for them. As the group rounded the final corner to the shuttle bay, the shadow devourers suddenly coalesced into a massive wall of living darkness, blocking their escape route entirely. Rex stopped, feeling the children's terror spike behind him. This was it, the final test. Vex stepped forward, every warrior instinct screaming at him to charge the barrier with guns blazing. Grak hefted his heavy weapon, ready to blast through whatever stood in their way. But Rex held up a hand, stopping them. "No," he said quietly. "There's another way." He looked down at the purple starfish creature in his arms, then at the 24 other alien children who had somehow learned to trust a species they'd never met before today. "Kids," he said gently, "I need you to help me with something. Can you be very brave? For just a few more minutes." The butterfly centipede who had spoken earlier chittered softly. Rex's translator rendered it as, "We are brave when the soft one leads." Rex smiled, and in that smile was something the shadow devourers had never encountered before. It wasn't predator confidence or warrior bravado. It was the quiet certainty of someone who had found something worth protecting and refused to give it up. "Then let's go home." Rex walked directly toward the wall of living darkness. Not charging, not sneaking, not hesitating, just walking with the calm determination of someone who had somewhere important to be and wasn't going to let a minor inconvenience like cosmic horror get in his way. The shadow devourers reacted with confusion. Their wall of darkness writhed and twisted, trying to understand this new behavior. Where was the fear? Where was the aggression? Where was the delicious terror they had been feeding on? "Stay close to me," Rex said softly to the children, "and whatever happens, remember that you're safe." Behind him, Vex and Grok watched in fascination and growing horror as their new human ally approached what was essentially a living manifestation of every nightmare that had ever existed. Rex's heartthrob, which their enhanced senses could detect, was elevated but steady. He wasn't calm because he wasn't afraid. He was calm because he had decided that his fear didn't matter. "This is insane," Grok whispered. "This is human," Vex replied, and there was something like awe in his voice. Rex reached the shadow barrier and, to everyone's amazement, simply placed his hand against it. The darkness recoiled from his touch like it had been burned, not because of any special power or weapon, but because of what Rex represented. He was a protector who had chosen to protect, not because he was stronger or more dangerous than the threat, but because protection was what the situation required. "You know what your problem is?" Rex said conversationally to the writhing mass of darkness. "You're parasites. You can only feed on what others give you," Fear, aggression, dominance. All emotions that come from thinking you're alone against the universe. The shadow devourers pressed forward, trying to envelop him, but something was wrong. They couldn't seem to touch him properly. Their darkness slid around him like oil on water. But we're not alone, Rex continued, taking another step forward. The barrier gave way reluctantly. These children aren't alone. They've got me, they've got Pip, they've got two very scary but ultimately kind-hearted Saurian warriors watching their backs. Behind him, the alien children began to understand what was happening. The purple starfish creature made a sound that Rex's translator rendered as pack warmth, safety song. And suddenly all the children were making similar sounds. Not screams of terror, but calls of unity. The shadow devourers recoiled as if struck by lightning. That's the thing about humans, Rex said, pushing through the weakening barrier. We're really good at making families out of strangers. It's kind of our specialty. Vex, watching this impossible scene unfold, suddenly understood something that revolutionized his entire worldview. Rex wasn't dominating the shadow devourers through superior firepower or tactical advantage. He was simply refusing to give them what they needed to exist. By the ancestors, Vex breathed. He's not fighting them at all. No, Grak said, his voice filled with wonder. He's starving them. Rex had pushed through the barrier entirely now, and it was collapsing behind him like smoke in a strong wind. The children followed in his wake, their earlier terror replaced by something the shadow devourers couldn't digest: trust. But the creatures had one final gambit. Unable to feed on the emotions they expected, they began to shift tactics, trying to take physical form, to become a threat that would force Rex to respond with aggression. They manifested as a massive clawed creature that looked like every predator that had ever stalked through alien nightmares. It reared up before Rex, towering over him, radiating malevolence and physical threat. Rex looked up at it and sighed. Really? That's your big finale? He shifted the starfish creature to a more comfortable position in his arms. Look, I appreciate the effort, but you're still missing the point. The creature lunged and bounced off an energy barrier that materialized between it and Rex. Vex had fired, but not at the creature. He'd activated a defensive shield, protecting Rex and the children without attacking the threat directly. Defensive positions, Vex commanded, and his entire fleet responded. But instead of offensive formations designed to destroy enemies, they formed protective perimeters designed to safeguard allies. Now you're getting it, Rex said approvingly. Grak, evacuation escort. Pip, medical support. Everyone else, we're running a protection detail, not a hunting party. The transformation was remarkable to witness. The Saurian warriors, who had spent their entire military careers thinking in terms of conquest and domination, suddenly found themselves operating under an entirely new paradigm. Instead of seeking to destroy threats, they focused on protecting what mattered. The shadow devourers, faced with this coordinated wall of protective intent rather than aggressive force, began to lose cohesion entirely. They were parasites, adapted to feed on fear and violence, not cooperation and care. Shuttle bay secured, came the report from Vex's fleet. Medical teams standing by, Pip added. Transport ready for immediate departure, Grak confirmed. Rex looked around at the alien children clustered around him, then at the Saurian warriors who had somehow transformed from terrifying predators into protective guardians, then at the rapidly dissipating shadow devourers who were discovering that their entire feeding strategy was useless against opponents who refused to be afraid or angry. You know, he said to Vex, I think we make a pretty good team. Vex, who was coordinating a defensive evacuation with the same tactical precision he'd once used to conquer star systems, nodded grimly. Humans are unexpected allies. We try to keep things interesting. The evacuation proceeded with remarkable efficiency. Instead of the chaotic retreat Rex had expected, it became a textbook example of interspecies cooperation. The Saurians used their strength and tactical expertise to create secure corridors. The humans provided emotional support and coordination, and somehow, impossibly, 24 terrified alien children were safely transported to the rescue ships. As the last shuttle lifted off from the research station, Rex found himself in the surreal position of conducting an impromptu intergalactic daycare center in the cargo bay of a Saurian warship. The children had refused to be separated from him, and frankly, after everything they'd been through together, Rex wasn't about to abandon them now. The shadow devourers have withdrawn entirely, Vex reported, settling his massive frame carefully on the deck beside Rex. Even sitting, the Saurian captain was impressive, But the children no longer seemed terrified of him. Wary, perhaps, but not terrified. "They'll find other feeding grounds," Rex said quietly, stroking the fur of a small blue creature that had claimed his lap as territory. "But they won't forget this. We showed them something they'd never seen before." "What was that?" "Predators who chose to be protectors instead." Grok approached, moving with the careful precision of someone trying not to startle small creatures. "Commander Rex, the younglings require sustenance. Our food synthesizers are calibrated for saurian metabolism." "No problem," Rex said. "Pip's got emergency rations that should work for most carbon-based life forms. And I think we've got some of those universal nutrition paste things that taste terrible but keep everyone alive." "You would share your provisions?" "Grak, buddy, these are kids. Of course we're sharing our provisions." The big saurian warrior looked down at the alien children, then back at Rex. "I begin to understand why the younglings trust you so readily." "It's not complicated," Rex said. "You just have to remember that protecting something means putting its needs before your own, even if that something is small and helpless and from a completely different species." Around them, the impromptu refugee camp settled into an exhausted but peaceful quiet. Children curled up against each other and, surprisingly, against Rex and even the carefully still saurian warriors. The purple starfish creature had somehow managed to distribute itself between Rex's shoulder and Vex's arm, apparently having decided that both protectors were acceptable. "The rescue fleet will arrive within the hour," Vex announced. "The younglings will be returned to their families." "Good," Rex said, then realized he was going to miss this. Somehow, in the space of a few hours, he'd gone from diplomatic first contact to emergency babysitting to whatever this was. Found family, maybe. "Rex," Vex said thoughtfully, "what you did today, that was not the behavior of prey species." "No," Rex agreed, "but it also wasn't the behavior of predators." "Then what was it?" Rex looked around at the sleeping alien children, at the saurian warriors who had learned to be gentle, at his own crew who had risen to an impossible challenge, at the empty space where the shadow devourers had been before they learned that some things couldn't be conquered or consumed. "I think," he said slowly, "it was the behavior of a pack." 3 months later, Rex stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned rescue vessel Unlikely Guardian, watching his mixed human-saurian crew conduct what had become a depressingly routine operation. Another shadow devourer cleanup. "Status report," he called to his communications officer, who happened to be the same butterfly centipede child they'd rescued from Kepler-7, now serving as a translator for the growing interspecies rescue coalition. "The Vrexian colony ships report all shadow devourer activity has ceased," Clix chirped, his voice much more confident than it had been in that emergency shelter. "The creatures withdrew immediately upon detecting our approach signature." "They're learning to recognize us," Pip observed from her position at the medical station. She was training a young saurian medic in interspecies pediatric care, a sentence that would have made Rex laugh 3 months ago and now seemed perfectly normal. "Good," Rex said. "Maybe eventually we won't have to chase them around the galaxy. Maybe they'll just find somewhere else to be." "Incoming transmission from Captain Thornscale," Grak announced. The massive saurian had taken over as Rex's tactical coordinator, and had proven surprisingly adept at logistics when he wasn't trying to conquer things. Vex's face appeared on the main screen, broadcasting from his flagship. Behind him, Rex could see what appeared to be a saurian warrior carefully bottle-feeding something small and fuzzy. "Rex, the Altarian system evacuation is complete. No casualties, minimal trauma response from the younglings. Your protocols worked perfectly." "Our protocols," Rex corrected. "I may have written the manual, but you guys are the ones making it work." The Manual for Interspecies Child Protection and Emergency Response had become something of a galactic bestseller, which was both gratifying and slightly terrifying. Rex had never intended to become the galaxy's leading expert on alien childcare, but the universe apparently had a sense of humor. "Speaking of which," Vex continued, "we have received 17 more requests to join the coalition this week. Word is spreading that there is an alternative to traditional predatorial dominance models of protection." 17, Rex whistled. "At this rate, we're going to need a bigger ship, or several bigger ships." "Already under construction," Grok reported with obvious satisfaction. "The Centaurian shipyards are producing vessels specifically designed for rescue operations. They're calling them Guardian-class ships." "After our ship?" "After you, actually," Vex said, and Rex could see something that might have been amusement in the saurian's expression. The shipyard workers insisted. Apparently Rex class didn't have the right ring to it. Rex felt a familiar mix of pride and exasperation. Great. My legacy is going to be a bunch of ships named after an accidental diplomat who stumbled into intergalactic childcare. Worse legacies exist, Pip pointed out. You could be remembered as the guy who accidentally started a war, instead of the guy who accidentally started a peace. Fair point. The tactical display chimed, and Clix's antennae twitched in the pattern Rex had learned meant urgent information. Commander, we're receiving a priority distress call from the Helix Nebula. Shadow Devourer activity confirmed. Multiple species affected. Estimated 300 children at risk. Rex felt the familiar tightening in his chest that came with these calls. 300 kids. 300 families torn apart by creatures that fed on terror and despair. Plot a course, he ordered. Maximum speed. Send word to Captain Thornscale and all Coalition vessels in the area. Full rescue deployment. Already done, Grok rumbled with satisfaction. Estimated time to rendezvous, 6 hours. As the unlikely Guardian shifted course and accelerated toward the Helix Nebula, Rex found himself reflecting on how much had changed since that first awkward diplomatic meeting. The Human Saurian Rescue Coalition now included 47 different species, operated 63 rescue vessels, and had successfully evacuated over 10,000 beings from Shadow Devourer attacks. More importantly, they had fundamentally changed how the galaxy thought about strength. Rex, Vex's voice came over the comm. I have been thinking about our first encounter. The part where we almost shot each other because we couldn't agree on who was more dangerous? That part, yes, I have realized something important. Oh, we were both wrong. Humans are not prey species, and Saurians are not the galaxy's apex predators. But we were also both right. Rex settled into his command chair, genuinely curious. How do you figure? Humans are indeed apex predators, but not in the way we understood the term. You do not dominate through fear or violence. You dominate through adaptation, cooperation, and the stubborn refusal to abandon those under your protection. And Saurians. We are apex guardians. Our strength serves best when it protects rather than conquers, when it builds rather than destroys. Rex smiled, watching the stars streak past as they raced toward another crisis, another group of terrified children who needed someone to stand between them and the darkness. You know what I think? He said finally. What? I think the galaxy's a better place when predators decide to be parents instead. Over the comm, he could hear Vex's rumbling laugh. Indeed. Though I should warn you, the Helix mission will likely result in more requests to join the Coalition. The Crystalline Collective has been expressing interest. Living Rock people want to join our childcare operation? Living Rock people who are excellent at building secure facilities and have young of their own to protect. Rex rubbed his temples. At this rate, we're going to end up with a galactic babysitting service. Is that so terrible? Rex looked around at his bridge, at Clix coordinating communications in 6 languages, at Pip training alien medics in bedside manner, at Grak efficiently managing resources across dozens of worlds, at the display showing their growing fleet of rescue vessels racing toward another crisis. He thought about the children they'd saved, the families they'd reunited, the Shadow Devourers who now fled at the first sign of Coalition vessels rather than face creatures who refused to be afraid. He thought about the letters they received from grateful parents across the galaxy, written in dozens of different languages but all expressing the same sentiment. Thank you for refusing to let the darkness win. No, Rex said finally, as the unlikely Guardian and her escort fleet dropped out of hyperspace to find a colony in crisis and 300 alien children who needed someone to stand guard while they slept safely in their parents' arms. No, I don't think it's terrible at all. Contact established with the colony, Clix reported. They're asking for Commander Rex by name. Of course they are, Rex said, standing up and straightening his uniform. Right, people, let's go show some Shadow Devourers why you should never mess with someone else's kids when the galaxy's most overqualified babysitters are on duty. As the rescue fleet moved into position around the threatened colony, Rex allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. He'd set out to be a diplomat and somehow become a professional child protector instead. It wasn't the career path he'd planned, but watching Saurian warriors carefully extract frightened alien youngsters from danger, while human medics provided comfort and reassurance, he couldn't imagine doing anything else. The cubs slept safely while the predator pack stood guard. And in the end, Rex thought, that was probably the most important job in the universe.